Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga for the Game Boy Advance is the first video game I ever truly fell in love with, and it kickstarted my lifelong obsession with Nintendo and gaming as a whole. Yet I feel like I've never properly covered it on this channel before, despite how important it is to me. So let's fix that. Without further ado, let's get straight into what makes this game special to me and many others. Superstar Saga is the first entry in the now bankrupt Alpha Dreams Mario & Luigi series of RPGs, taking heavy inspiration from the Mario universe's previous attempts at the genre, being Squaresoft's Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars on the Super Nintendo and the Paper Mario series by Intelligent Systems, but it also manages to create its own unique identity to set itself apart from its prior influences. While Superstar Saga retains the humorous dialogue and original characters and settings not typically found in the main series, it also puts more of an emphasis on the brotherly relationship between Mario and Luigi, something which I think it uses to its advantage in both the gameplay and character interactions. The story begins when Princess Peach receives visitors in the form of the Goodwill Ambassadors from the Bean Bean Kingdom, a land that neighbours the Mushroom Kingdom with locales named after various onomatopoeia for laughter, and is full of people that take the form of humanoid green beans, known as the Beanish. However, the mood quickly turns sour, as it is revealed that the ambassadors are merely the dastardly Beanish witch Cackletta and an evil genius accomplice Forful in disguise, who spray Peach with a nasty substance that extracts her voice and replaces it with, as this toad puts it, explosive vocabulary. It's probably curse words that they creatively censored to keep things PG. And when Peach is in trouble, it's only natural that the Mario Brothers spring into action, forming a temporary truce with longtime arch-nemesis Bowser to pursue the new villains in their home kingdom. And I have no idea how Luigi does not impale himself on Bowser's spikes here, but oh well. Cackletta and Forful are revealed to be after the power of the legendary Beanstar, an artifact that is said to grant the wishes of those who awaken it, and for that to happen, it must be exposed to a voice of pure beauty, such as Peach. You know, the same Peach who constantly screams for Mario's help. Yeah, that beautiful voice. From this point, Mario and Luigi must navigate the Bean Bean Kingdom with their combined skills and wits, learning new abilities that put emphasis on their teamwork, whether it's navigating the overworld or taking on all sorts of colourful enemies in combat, which shakes up the conventions that you typically expect in RPGs. Mario's actions are assigned to the A button, while Luigi's are done with the B button, and the game takes full advantage of the Game Boy Advance's limited button layout to create something that continues to stay fresh throughout the adventure, as it gets expanded on through progression with new abilities. As an early example, you can both jump during overworld exploration, which can be used to jump over obstacles, learning the high jump and spin jump techniques to reach high up platforms or cross larger gaps by switching positions with the start button and using the L and R shoulder buttons to swap between the abilities. Eventually, you gain the ability to swing hammers as well, and learn these special elemental hand techniques, which not only allowed you to interact with the environment to solve puzzles in the overworld, but they also serve as extensions of your arsenal in combat. Typically in RPGs, you might find yourself trying to avoid encounters, as they can feel like a bit of a drag, especially if they're random. But in Mario & Luigi's case, it's another example among a few others where enemies are visible in the overworld, and skillful maneuvers mean you can evade them entirely. Or, much like Paper Mario, you can get a first strike if you successfully jump on them, starting the battle off with dealing damage straight away, or inflicting dizziness on them if you strike them with your hammer, potentially leaving them unable to act in the first turn. While the likes of Earthbound and Chrono Trigger have already subverted random encounters by allowing you to actually see enemies in the field, it's nice to see that Superstar Saga followed this trend. Also, much like previous Mario RPGs, Being able to perform well in combat depends on your ability to time your button presses, not just with your own attacks to deal extra damage, but also when it comes to dodging incoming attacks from enemies, and even being able to counter-attack them entirely on some occasions, meaning you could theoretically beat the entire game without taking a single point of damage if you're skilled enough.
Challenge accepted.
Well, that didn't work out. Anyway, I wanted to bring special attention to the enemy variety found in this game. We've obviously got classics like the Goombas that are essentially used as tutorial fodder at the start, and then we go on to like beanified takes of a lot of the other classics like the Lakipi, which is a beanified variant of the Lakitu enemy, and they follow you around in the overworld and they throw spiny equivalent Sharpies at you to be an annoyance. We've also got deep cuts like the return of the Fighter Flies from the Mario Bros. Arcade game, as well as originals like the Tanumbas, which fuse Goombas with the Tanukis of Super Mario Bros. 3 fame. And this was long before the Tanuki power-up and Tanukified enemies in Super Mario 3D Land came along. One of my personal favourites are the viruses from Dr. Mario, which show up in the Woohoo University stage, and they cycle through and change colours each time they get hit. And much like the source material, if you manage to match their colours, they are instantly defeated in one go, which I thought was a really fun detail that practically rewards you for knowing your Mario Universe lore. Another one I wanted to bring special attention to is the Chomp Bro, who weaponizes a chain chomp that he throws around like a medieval flail, and if you time your jump counter well, you can land on the chomp and confiscate it, leading to the Chomp Bro to have a little strop. Just look at him, you took away his favourite toy and you ruined his day as a result. It's so funny and it's just really charming stuff all around. There's also many more examples of quirky enemies that show up to the point where you look forward to each new area. And sure, there are a few palette swaps here and there, but it's really not a big deal when there's still new enemies even in the final area of the game. So there's plenty of variety that makes running into them consistently interesting throughout the game's runtime. A huge part of what makes Superstar Saga so well put together for me is the fact that it takes full advantage of the GBA's limited amount of buttons to create a consistently engaging adventure that feels fun to traverse, as well as to fight enemies in. And being the first ever Mario RPG to really released on a handheld console, I think Alpha Dream executed its accessibility perfectly. From the typical 4-button layout we were used to on the SNES with Super Mario RPG, to the addition of the N64's control stick in Paper Mario, Superstar Saga proves that a compelling RPG can still be pulled off when stripped down to just the D-pad and A and B buttons, especially considering how well it has aged in the time since. Maybe there's some nostalgia bias here, considering it is the game that introduced me not just to RPGs, but to Mario and Nintendo as a whole. Superstar Saga continues the trend found in Mario RPGs, where characters that didn't get much of an opportunity to shine personality-wise in the context of the main series get much more room to be expressive this time round. A recurring gag that would carry on in the sequels would be characters forgetting Luigi's name, which you'd think they'd be over by at this point, considering Luigi's Mansion happened not too long before this game and beat Mario to it in terms of having the honours of starring in a launch title for the GameCube. I mean, what more does this poor guy need to do to prove his name is worth remembering? Like seriously, why do you all have to do him so dirty to the point where he has to get himself hypnotized into thinking he's Mario just so he can build the courage to tackle the Gafurha ruins by himself when Mario is out of commission for a brief point in the game? If you look up the actual definition of courage in the dictionary, it's the ability to do something that frightens one, which makes Luigi quite possibly the most courageous character in the whole of the Mario universe, as we constantly see him visibly afraid, yet he still presses on and does what needs to be done. Put more respect on his name, goddammit. Another one of my favourite depictions in this game is Bowser being somewhat of a reluctant ally, which isn't exactly new ground considering his role as a party member in Mario RPG, but it's still a nice way of giving other villains the spotlight and to establish them as threats to be taken more seriously, as we even see Bowser being exploited by them on 2 different occasions. And without trying to spoil later Mario and Luigi games, this kinda starts off a character arc for Bowser, whether it's intentional or not, where we see him gradually become more of a threat in each subsequent entry, rather than just being an additional nuisance on the side for the brothers to deal with on top of whoever the main villain happens to be at the time. It doesn't just stop at the familiar faces. Superstar Saga also introduces many fantastic new characters native to the Bean Bean Kingdom. We've got the dashing Prince Peasley, who rides around on what appears to be a flying cushion and blinds the screen whenever he flicks his hair. He carries so much aura to the point where Luigi constantly fanboys over him, and even visibly shows distress whenever Peasley finds himself in danger. There's also the great Popple the Shadow Thief, who is one of the examples I alluded to earlier in terms of villains that exploit Bowser, particularly when he loses his memory and is taken under Popple's wing. This guy is somebody that you'll run into throughout the game and serves as a bit of a nuisance, but a fun one, don't get me wrong. And how could I neglect to mention the undisputed fan favourite, the Great Fawful. Even though he's Cackleta's underling, his dialect is super memorable and speaks unique idioms that are reminiscent of translation errors found in the NES era of games, and Cackleta would be nothing without this guy, as he's the one who provides the ideas and inventions that save her ass on several occasions. It's no wonder that despite his limited appearances, he is widely regarded as not just one of the greatest villains in the Mario universe, but the wider Nintendo Rogues Gallery as a whole. Naturally, being an RPG, Superstar Saga also comes with some nice side content to pass the time, particularly through its creative minigames that once again make the most out of the Game Boy Advance's limited button range. We have this surfing minigame which I remember spending countless hours on as a kid, trying to grind the bean rewards to exchange for stat-enhancing coffees at the Starbeans Cafe in Bean Bean Castletown, which we'll also get to in a bit. There's also this barrel puzzle game run by a skeletal Kong-like character, which I personally found tricky to get adjusted to, but was satisfying once you got the hang of it. And this really addictive seesaw one found in the Little Fungi Town arcade, where a miniature Geno makes a cameo appearance. This was pretty surreal stuff to see at the time for fans of Super Mario RPG, as this was his only other official appearance before his Mii costume in Smash Bros. Several years later, and in the end credits, it establishes that he was indeed owned by Square Enix, so seeing him pop up was a pretty big deal. And this is just one of the many examples of how Superstar Saga pays tribute to many corners of the Mario mythos, whether it's the RPGs, the main series platformers, and even other Mario-adjacent titles like Donkey Kong, Yoshi's Island, and Luigi's Mansion. Going back to the side content, another one of my favourite features is the aforementioned Starbeans Cafe, which allows you to convert the various bean types you collect throughout the adventure into coffees, which then permanently increase your stats by a few points. You're probably not going to really need to do all this all that much, considering the game is generally on the easy side challenge-wise, but every time you make a new blend for the first time, you receive a visit from Professor Egad of Luigi's Mansion fame. After an amusing scene plays out, typically involving ghosts giving Luigi a fright, or Egad demonstrating a quirky invention, he gifts you with a special accessory that you can equip that offers great bonuses in combat. And if you're a seasoned Nintendo veteran, some of these may look familiar. And while this is an overdone piece of trivia seen in many fact videos surrounding Superstar Saga, these sequences were originally intended to have other Nintendo All-Stars visiting the cafe to gift you the items that are themed around their respective series, just for it to be EGAD only in the final version. I can't help but feel like this is such a missed opportunity, as it would have been really fun to see the likes of Link, Samus and Olimar interact with the brothers in this way, but oh well, the items themselves still retain their unique appearances, so you can still connect the dots even without this knowledge. I think it would be a great disservice to Superstar Saga if I didn't bring special attention to its stellar soundtrack. This is no surprise when you realise that it was composed by none other than Yoko Shimomura of Kingdom Hearts fame, who makes her return after previously working on the soundtrack for Super Mario RPG, and would go on to compose for future Mario and Luigi entries. Some highlights for me include the grandiose vibe of Bean Bean Castle, the ominous finality of Bowser's Castle during the endgame, and quite possibly my favourite, Teehee Valley. Honestly, the Mario and Luigi series in particular seems to really excel when it comes to the music in their desert-themed areas, and this was before the fan-favourite Gritzy Desert came along. It is also worth mentioning that the arrangements found in the 3DS remake are also fantastic, some of which are arguably improvements over the GBA's limitations, and I thought it was worth mentioning as general discourse surrounding the remake as a whole often deems it less favourably compared to the original. But at the very least, I'd argue that the soundtrack is one of the areas that is generally superior. They're kind of how I originally imagined they'd sound without being restricted to a 32-bit handheld sound chip, and does each location of the Bean Kingdom justice for the most part. About halfway through the game's runtime, the Beanstar has been shattered into 4 pieces which have landed in various locations across the Bean Kingdom, and when Luigi returns from his solo outing to save Mario who has come down with Bean Fever, A familiar Koopa clown car appears, with a familiar set of claws dragging Peach down within. Only this isn't the Bowser we all know. It is none other than Bowletta. Turns out after Cackletta was initially thought to have been defeated at Woohoo University, Farfel extracted her soul with his signature vacuum helmet, and the pair conveniently happened to stumble across Bowser's unconscious body after he, Popple, and the brothers had a little scuffle over the Beanstar. Put them together, and you get this monstrosity, complete with a bulbous set of glowing pink eyes. What? What do you think I was going to say? Anyway, Boobletta holds Peach for ransom at the ominous joke's end, promising to return her in exchange for the brothers reassembling the Beanstar and making a trade. Sounds reasonable. I bet she won't just use the Beanstar's power to fulfill her twisted ambitions. No, seriously, she actually doesn't. This is probably the main gripe I can even think of about the game's story. The Beanstar, being described as the source of unimaginable power, something which I'm sure we all know is a common trope found within RPGs, never actually demonstrates what it's capable of. And no, breaking the floor one time barely counts, let's be real. The brothers don't even get to use it to overpower Bowletta or anything, and it's kind of a letdown. This is even more confusing, when as the brothers plan to give Bowletta a fake replica of the Beanstar crafted by Peasley to deceive her, only to bring the real one along with them. They couldn't have just left it behind at Bean Bean Castle where it would have been in safe hands. Like I said, they don't actually use it for themselves, and Farfel is a pretty smart guy, so of course he was going to be able to see straight through the fake one. It does however lead to an amusing scene where Luigi uses a spare dress provided by Toadsworth to disguise himself as Peach, marking a rare occasion in the series where one of the brothers speak in full sentences. Sure, he does it in Paper Mario, but still. After all of this, the scene is set for the final battle. Bowletta hijacks Bowser's castle to launch an assault on Bean Bean Castletown, leaving it up to Mario and Luigi to confront her on this decisive battleground, where they face further obstacles in the form of some classic enemies that we all know as the Koopalings. As much as these guys are notorious nowadays for being overused by Nintendo in the main series platformers and taking up a good chunk of the Mario Kart 8 roster, it's important to keep in mind that this was like the first time in over 10 years that they've been brought back, since they went on hiatus after Yoshi's Safari in 1993. So it was actually kind of a big deal at the time to see them return and be acknowledged in this manner. I also think it's a really cute detail that the order you fight them in is the same order that you fight them in Super Mario World. Just thought that was a fun fact to throw out there. After that's done, you have one last obstacle. Farfel, out for revenge from the previous encounter, vows to put a stop to you once and for all, and it's even subtly implied that he planned on betraying and usurping Cackletta, something which we'd see get expanded on in the remake's bonus story, setting him up as a major threat in future Mario and Luigi games. With a bit of help from Peasley, Farfel is left out of the picture for the time being for the brothers to finally put a stop to Bowletta. After everything seems to be going well, a time bomb which was set up as a battle mechanic in the Koopaling fight sequences appears out of nowhere to knock Mario and Luigi out cold, leading Bowletta to inhale them 2 whole games before being sucked inside Bowser's body became a central theme. After regaining consciousness, the brothers have one last stand against Cackletta's spirit. I think it's safe to say that this is one of the rare occasions in the Mario universe where an on-screen death takes place. Bowser practically gets exorcised, and Cackletta's soul disappears into thin air, to never be seen again in future entries. After we say farewell to the Beanish Witch, it turns out Prince Peasley has wired the castle with an explosive, leading us to retreat as if it's a Metroid escape sequence. But honestly, after a lengthy 2-phase final encounter that followed a long string of mini-bosses and the strongest enemy encounters in the whole adventure, the game is pretty generous and gives us more than enough time to get out. I mean, I ended up with over 2 minutes to spare. Sure, I've played this game dozens of times throughout my life, so I know where to go and what to do like the back of my hand, but I doubt first timers are going to struggle here. So don't let the natural anxiety that comes with having a time limit forced on you pressure you all that much during this final stretch. So that pretty much wraps up everything. It's time to embark back home to the Mushroom Kingdom. Toadsworth and Lady Lima are sad to see each other go, and we get a parting gift in the form of sending Bowser back with the plane so that he can continue terrorizing us. I mean, I guess I can't blame the Beanish people for not wanting him around. As far as they're aware, he's the Mushroom Kingdom's problem, not theirs. Honestly, I've had such a good time going back to one of my childhood favourites, and still to this day rank it within my top 5 favourite games of all time. Even when I try to remove nostalgic attachment out of the equation, we still have a reasonably length adventure filled with charming characters and settings, engaging exploration and combat, and just a lot of heart in general. And I strongly urge anyone that is yet to experience it to give it a try. either through a second-hand copy of the 3DS remake, or as part of the GBA selection found on the expansion pass for Nintendo Switch Online, which is probably its most accessible way of playing it at the moment. Anyway, I think that just about does it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. This was a bit of a passion project of mine that I've been putting off for quite some time, as I've wanted to give this game the justice I think it deserves. So be sure to share this around and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more content like this around here. Any support goes a long way, and without further ado, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all back here for another time.